right, so last week we talked a lot about the brain and neuroscience and what makes somebody a little bit more liberal or conservative. Now, this has been a very interesting week, right? Because I started off last week saying that when you have scientific knowledge, and we have like 30 to 40 years worth of studies that don't prove anything, but they do suggest a lot of information. When you bring that information out, we're not doing it to necessarily hurt anybody's feelings, anything like that. But it would be almost malpractice if we didn't talk about what's really out there in the science world. So, but it seems like, just like we talked about, all these conservative people are so offended. So you can keep your death threats and everything else to yourself and stop with the anger, because it's ridiculous. Go to your Trump rallies if that's what you need to do. Because, like I told John, we're going to double down on our stuff because I'm not going to pull back on anything that's truthful. That's the way it is. I even held up a board. And true to what we said, I still can't find a conservative who's willing to admit that the stock market is over 18,000. That's not liberal or conservative. That's just a straight number. Why can't you admit it? Now, I don't have a lot to give here, but I was going to give away a free book for the first conservative that could admit that 18,000 is higher than 8,000. Because 8,000 was about the stock market when Obama took over. Now, that's not political. That's just a simple math number, right? So what we have today is a very special guest. We have Vicki Lynch with us.
Woohoo, Vicki. Go, Vicki.
And she is a recreational therapist. You've been for how many years?
Well, I was for about 20 years.
20 years.
With the state of California.
Wow.
But in more recent years, case manager,
Okay.
service coordinator.
And what exactly does what's a recreational therapist do?
It's been a while. I stopped doing it in '95. It's using recreation to teach skills to whoever your clientele is. In my case, I was at a state hospital, at 3 different state hospitals.
Wow.
And so we would run clinical groups using activities to build motor skills or eye-hand coordination or self-esteem, anything, any number of things.
So you dealt with cognitive issues
Yes,
also?
well, definitely, because our clientele was intellectually disabled.
Right.
So that was primarily it. But at a certain point, I got into managing people's programs, making sure that they would get services that were identified and that the services were doing well and were meeting their needs, and if it needed to be tweaked, it also. It was, I found that end of it rewarding because I kind of coordinated a variety of disciplines, not just be one discipline, namely a recreation therapist.
Right. So how would you treat somebody, let's say, in terms of recreational therapy? So it's movement, it's talk therapy also, I would imagine?
I was also involved in Special Olympics, and everybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
So, that, of course, had to do with physical activity and motor skills and all that. What I would do is I would identify what the needs of a person were, and then I'd have an objective.
Okay.
And I'd have plans to go with my objective. So a little bit like teaching that way.
Right.
And so, it's try to individualize it as much as possible.
What
So-
made you decide to do that in your career?
Because I got a job at Porterville State Hospital, and I went through the employment department, and this was in 1972. And they offered me this job, and I was absolutely horrified at the thought of a state hospital. But it paid so much. It paid $494 a month.
Hold, what?
And yeah, and I was like, oh my God.
Everybody's like, what?
I thought you were going to say
What
like
do
an
I
hour.
do? And that was like so much money then. I mean, that, I had a couple of years of college, and that was it, So that morning I said goodbye to my mother, and I said, well, I'll probably be home by noon. You know, I doubt this is going to work out. And here I am all these years later because I loved it. I loved it. And so I was there for about 6 months, and I was really motivated by a woman who was a teacher of the deaf. And she was just a fantastic person she had started like a new career in her 50s, and she was just so, she was so good at what she did that I thought, oh God, I want to be her. So at that point, that year, the next semester, I started Fresno State in deaf education.
Wow.
But after a year, I realized that wasn't the right niche. So then I switched it over to recreation therapy.
So you like to help people?
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the 70s. That was what it was all about. My husband was a social worker, so, I mean, we both were, you know, that's what people kind of valued and did back then. I mean, it wasn't until the 80s that, you know, with Ronald Reagan, it got into more of a kind of a me kind of era, and business was their god and money. And it wasn't so much that way when we were younger.
So let's go back even a little bit further if we can. Can we go to 60s? Because that's my thing, even though I was a little kind of young. I was born in 65. Yeah,
Okay.
like, so did you go to Woodstock or anything like that?
No, but my husband knew somebody who did.
It counts a little.
I saw the movie.
Oh, well, yeah, me
It
too.
came out. But I saw it at the show when it came out.
Oh, the first time, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see Jimi Hendrix?
Yes, I saw Jimi Hendrix.
Tell me about that.
That was at the Hollywood Bowl.
All right.
And a friend kind of got a group of us together, and this was 1967. And I grew up in Southern California, so we were in Orange County, and we just had to drive up to LA to go to the Hollywood Bowl. And so we were really going up there to see the Mamas and the Papas.
Oh, a little on the mellower side,
Yeah,
but okay,
I mean,
all right.
California dreaming, and you know, that was where it was at. And so second on the bill was a guy named Scott McKenzie. And I don't know if you remember, if you're going to San Francisco, wear flowers in your hair.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the only song I know by him.
Well, he's a one-hit wonder. And so he was second on the bill. And third on the bill was this guy named Jimi Hendrix.
You didn't know what you were in for, did you?
No, and I mean, he was great. And I think at the end of, if I recall, at the end of his part, he beat his guitar to death, you know. So I guess he was kind of known for doing those kind of things. But I wish I had known then what a big deal he was going to be.
Right.
But this was, I'm not sure what year he started his career, but this was
I
very
think it was
early on.
probably about 67. Yeah, he was only around for like 3 years
Yeah,
before he died.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I always love to tell people, oh, I saw Jimi Hendrix. It wasn't really my own doing. I get credit for it,
was an
though,
accident,
right?
yeah.
So you had flowers in your hair?
A
You
bit,
you were a
know.
hippie?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. You know, I wore bell bottoms and had my long hair and water buffalo sandals and beads. And, you know, that was...
That was it. That was how you
That
dressed.
was how we dressed. I don't know. I wasn't like somebody that was just going to take off and go to Haight-Ashbury or something. That wasn't, you know, to that point. It was more of a superficial. That was the style, and that.
Well, it was like in the 80s, too, when everybody was dressing like Madonna and that. I mean, we necessarily weren't. We were just doing what
Right.
everybody else was doing. Everybody
Right.
wanted their hair the
And
same
it didn't
way.
mean that you
It's
were the wild, free
Yeah.
spirit that Madonna was.
What? We
Yeah.
just did our hair like hers, and we wore
Yeah.
her clothes and all that. It's the same kind of
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. So, yeah. I'm glad that I grew up when I did, because I thought the 60s and 70s were great.
I wish I grew up a little bit sooner. Yeah, that would have been great too.
Yeah.
So tell me about when you were that age. What was the community like? Because like if I compare it now, I see young people. they can't even listen to a full album of music, right? Everything is like they buy one song, they buy one song, they buy one song. They don't have the mindset to sit down and actually read a book totally through. I noticed that they call themselves friends, but more or less they have Instagram followers and Facebook friends, but they're never that close. They can hang out with each other. Heidi and I did this last week. We were driving here, and we were watching these kids walk across the street. And it was like one at a time, one at a
all
time,
had their
one at a time,
headphones
and they
on.
all were looking at their phones.
Yeah.
It was
And
ridiculous.
but they also had headphones in their ears.
Oh, and they had headphones, so
So-
they don't even know what's going on around them.
No.
So,
I think that's dangerous.
yeah.
That's the mom in me. Don't do that when you're in a
Yeah,
parking
because you don't
lot
hear
or-
anybody. You don't hear nothing.
I know.
When I
here
walk my
comes a
dogs,
car and too bad you
I
didn't
see
hear
people
it.
with headphones when they're walking their dogs and
Yeah.
stuff, and I'm like, God, you can't hear if somebody comes up behind you. You can't see a car, hear a car.
Yeah, and
Right.
to me it was sad because it just looks like everybody's an individual. I remember when I was a kid, it was like, okay, we had the jocks, then we had this crowd and this crowd, but at least there were crowds.
Oh yeah.
It's like, what was it like when
Oh
you,
yeah.
in the
I mean,
60s?
it was like that too. Yeah.
Hmm.
You kind of had your niche you fit into, and it seems more isolated now, the way the kids are with their phones. And of course, I got my phone too. I mean, I'm doing, but I think at this point in my life, maybe that isn't quite as important as it is when you're learning social skills and
Right.
and how to work with people and just to appreciate other people and their opinions. And, it's too bad.
So I like where you're going with that, with the appreciate other people's opinions. Do you think that because it seems like so many young people today are so isolated, that they kind of forget or they haven't learned empathy yet, where it seems like, people that are a little bit older, they come from communities. And it seems like we're losing all that. Like we're losing the fact that, okay, we can have differences of opinion and still be friends. Because I noticed that this week, I lose a ton of friends just because I have an opinion.
But see, I don't think it's just the kids.
No,
and that proves it right there.
That's, you know what, you're right. Yeah,
It's the
that's,
adults, because when you just said that, I have a lot of exposure to kids that are in their 20s and early 30s from the gym that I talk to daily, and we talk about different stuff here and there. And I have to say that a lot of the hostility and a lot of the negativity and a lot of the not wanting to get along does not come from that generation. That generation is kind of, they're in their own little thing, doing their own little thing, whatever their culture is. But when it comes to like politics and things that are going on in the world, they're kind of like, oh, everybody kind of messed it up, like the people ahead of us. They're kind of like going with the flow. They don't seem to be as involved or care that much.
There isn't such a feeling like we had in the 60s that you could really affect change, that you could really,
Right.
that if you got together with some people and protested or tried to create something that would help society, you felt like you could actually do it. And now, I don't think kids, even if that crossed their minds,
They don't think they make a difference, and that's the
Yeah.
that's the
That's
feeling
a lot
I
of
get. They
apathy.
say
Yeah.
we don't feel that us doing what we're doing is going to make a difference, so they're relying on, the generation, which is our generation before them. And unfortunately, I find that a lot of people around my age are just stuck in their own. You're either on one side or you're on the other, and you can't be even in the middle anymore. At one point, you could say, I'm a liberal middle thinker. Like I would say I could see all around. I'm not one side or the other. And you can't even say now that you're in the middle, because then you're actually hated on both sides for your political views. So
it's gotten nasty.
it's
Very
gotten
much.
really, really out of hand. And like I said, this generation that I see, they think they can't make a difference, because I'll talk to the young women too about the stuff with the commentary about Trump. And, although, people will turn around and say, oh, that stuff's been going on for years. Yes, it has been going on for years. But I think it's gotten a lot more maybe verbal. It's more accepting. I don't know. You would know
I
because
think
you've been
it's
around.
I really think social media, Facebook, brings out, if there were people around that because they were on their headphones and their phone and they weren't paying attention to the political scene, they sure saw it on Facebook.
Yeah, that's true.
So that a lot of people actually get their news now from Facebook. You know,
Yeah, that's crazy
and
too.
it's crazy because it's like what you're talking about. You only get a snippet. You know?
Yeah, I mean, if you've gone through Facebook, and I'm sure you have, it's like to find anything that's factual is like a needle in a haystack. And it's amazing to me. Like, someone will have this thought process of what they think is true, and they're so tied to it, but there's no factual basis whatsoever. It's amazing. But yet they want to hold on to that. You know?
Well, I was thinking about what you were saying before is that you upset so many people, even with with what you talked about last week.
Yeah.
And it's because you use that one bad word, science.
Oh, that's a terrible word
Oh.
in some place. Like, why is that a problem these days?
It's unbelievable that it is.
If you talk to people though that are in the medical profession that are educated, they will agree with those theories. Because I've got a couple clients one is a nurse, and she says absolutely. She goes, "What's the argument?" She goes, "You can look it up about altruism,
Altruism, yeah.
about empathy. That empathy is not something that you're taught. You either have it or you don't when you're born, and they've proven that through science. However, people will
They
argue
can
that
do brain
all day
scans
long and say, "No,
That's
that's
what we
not
talked
true."
about
Oh,
last
yeah.
week.
Right.
And people are so angry that we use the information. And I'm like, do you realize how, not you personally, but people, do you realize how many hours I spend looking through scholarly articles over a massive amount of years to come up with the best information, and people get hurt by it? I'm like, well, it is what it is. You know, the sun
You know what
rises
it
in the
is?
east. I mean,
It's because nobody believes information anymore. If you, depending on, in terms of cable TV, what cable station you listen to, they're presenting different facts that are at odds with each other.
yeah,
And
that's.
so, and so, they choose to believe, well, that must be true because that's what they said. And it may not be. And so
It's-
now what happens is you end up in a situation where you don't know what to believe. You don't know who to believe.
Hmm,
And who has the time to research everything?
right.
Nobody.
Yeah, so the good part of me, right, the compassionate part, I'd like to think I am, but I get angry too, like I'm a person. I try to see that and go, okay, well, what if I just was in a household where my dad or mom was watching Fox News all the time? Maybe that would influence me. So maybe I should be compassionate towards a person like that and have a little empathy, because, I don't know, if I was in that same place, maybe I would believe that garbage too. And it's really interesting. They have done studies, and I'm sure you know, that the more you listen to Fox News, the more unintelligent and misinformed you get, because they're, other than the sports scores and the weather, they're not saying anything that's really news. It's basically
Well,
propaganda.
they do a lot of commentary.
That's
Now,
yeah, is that news
They
though?
do a lot of commentary on MSNBC.
Absolutely,
also.
they do.
And so in that, therein may lie the problem. But I think in terms of just the news that they're presenting, for instance, I watch MSNBC and they will play an entire Donald Trump speech.
They do that.
And they will have on various congressmen and senators asking them their opinion on whatever the issue of the moment is. And I hear their responses, and some are Democrat and some are Republican. Now, I can view all of that and make up my own mind. I don't need a commentator then to tell me what I just saw,
Right.
and what it means,
Right.
and what I should think. And so when people want to say that MSNBC is so slanted left, well, really, because they're not just showing you the Democratic stuff.
Right.
And on Fox, I, to be honest, don't watch it. I don't know how much of the Democratic side of things they're showing. Do they show long Hillary Clinton speeches? Do they interview Democratic congressmen or senators?
Very rare.
Well, see,
Very
now,
rare.
to me, that's a difference. So a lot of people try to say, oh, Fox News and MSNBC, it's all the same. No, it's not.
But here's
Not really.
here's a little short list, just to throw some of this out here for you. Now, last week we talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect, which, just to remind people, it's that when you're ignorant, you're so ignorant you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
so you continue to go down the same path, and you're so tied to what you think is true that you don't look at anything else. So that's a big part. I like what Nietzsche said a long time ago. If you can't shed your own skin, you can't grow. You're going to die, right? In other words, as a progressive, you always are trying to shed your skin, or else we would still be driving around in rickshaws or something instead of a Mercedes, right? Like, so this whole regressive mentality, I'm not a part of. But if you tweak somebody, they go crazy. Now, here's just something that sounds. I mean, I'll try it on you because we haven't talked about this before, but I think this is so ridiculous. Like, someone will say, I don't like Obama because he's a Muslim, right? Like, he's not fit to be a president. Well, first of all, he's not a Muslim, right? We know that. Okay, so that's
we know that.
Yeah, I knew you would laugh because it's true. He's not a Muslim. Okay, but here's the funny part where the Dunning-Kruger effect really takes over. They're so ignorant that they don't know what they're saying, because since when is a Muslim not protected by our Constitution in the United States if you're a citizen?
I mean, so he very well could be Muslim. And
it wouldn't
why
even
would
matter
it
to me. See, that's the thing.
Yeah,
like,
It doesn't matter.
I don't care if what he is.
But see, they don't really see the contradiction there,
Right.
It's like, oh, he's a Muslim, therefore he could not ever be president. Really?
Well, that
not
doesn't
true.
make sense. Like,
Yeah.
what, in the 40s, we had concentration camps. We try to be nice to call them internment camps. But we had concentration camps in the United States because conservatives wanted to jail Japanese Americans.
Well, to be fair, FDR went along with that.
That's true, too. Yeah, that's definitely right.
We have Germany
1930.
1934.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, John. He's on it back there.
So why would even somebody verbalize that somebody's a Muslim? In other words, what, unless you specifically thought that all Muslims were bad, or that somehow being a Muslim would make it that you were unfit to lead. Like, that in itself is ignorant.
It's the whole terrorism thing, though. I think it also has to do with the time and place that Obama became president.
Right.
I think Muslim was just a way of kind of hiding behind another problem they had with his presidency.
Oh, you're going to say
because
he's
black.
black? Can we say that?
Do you think?
It's obvious.
Gee, let me think about that.
Yeah, let me think about that one. Okay, so Obama's.
It's like when people
they know enough to not be racist.
You have to be racist. It's the same thing when
it's
the same thing when people say things about gay people and they go, "I have nothing against gay people."
Right.
But they're the same ones that won't hire them for jobs. They're the ones that discriminate, and they'll say, "Well, you'll make another excuse why you don't particularly care for somebody's lifestyle." They never will say it's because you're gay.
Right.
And that's the same thing with the racist issues too.
Yeah.
Who wants to come out and say I'm a racist?
They know what is not politically correct to say.
Now, kind of.
I mean, in some cases.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people are aware that they shouldn't come out and say, I don't like that person because they're black. Trump has unleashed a lot of people who are now not afraid to come out and say that.
I was talking to Heidi about this, and here's for your Trump fans. I love Donald Trump for this one reason. Because
he's brought all the ugly people out. They're coming to the top of the soup.
Like, you ever watch CSI? And then they come in and they go, I wonder where the blood stains are. And you can't see them because somebody cleaned it up. And then they do that black light thing and they go, oh, there's the blood. There's the semen. There's the thing. There it is. So Trump is like the guy who walks in, turns on the light, and you go, oh, look at all the cockroaches. There they are. And they scatter.
Yeah.
But now they're allowed to come out.
Right.
So a lot of... there's so many things I wanted to talk about with you today.
But he shed light on
Yes, and I think that is actually a good thing because we can now talk about it. And it's very strange. Like, I have a lot of conservative friends. That's what I said last week. But in the back of my mind, and I was telling John this before, and Heidi knows this story because it actually does bother me. Like, I love talking to people. I love knowing where they come from and what they do and what led them to where they are and all these things. But the fact is, really, I come to this conclusion, they don't like me. Because we're only friends when I listen to them, but when I actually say something, they go crazy and then they ditch me. And I don't want to name names, because, with the show, but it's like that the first second you open up.
A controversial issue, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of whether it be some like a Donald Trump person, right, or conservative, let's say they're very religious, they can shove their religion down my throat all they want, and I'll go, that's very interesting, I'm glad you're passionate about that, I'm glad you love that, I know that that's done wonders for you and helps you live a good life. The very first second I say, I have my doubts, I'm not so sure that that's true, if you were born in a different country at a different time, I don't think I would be Catholic, let's say. Could very well be Muslim. They're like, really? Oh, well. And I go, yeah, and by the way, I have a lot of, as a person in the service industry, I have a lot of clients who are gay. And they're like, oh my God, no. And I go, yeah, I don't think me telling somebody who they can love in their life is like part of what I would do, and I wouldn't judge. And if I had to think about it, Jesus is much closer to being a liberal hippie than you will ever understand. And they're like, you know what? Our friendship's over. They won't call me back. They won't call me back.
They just lay it right out there for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, so what do you think?
Well, I don't want to be one of those people, but I don't have a lot of conservative friends. And I don't, because I don't want to have a lot of conservative friends.
Now, why not?
Because if they would be for Trump, if they would have attitudes about Muslims or gays that were like that, then I don't like the people they are. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to be open-minded about that.
Yeah, so let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
Because devil's advocate would say that as liberal, you would be accepting or more tolerant of people.
One would think. However,
yes.
I can be tolerant of people until they're not tolerant of other people. To me, if I accept that, it's okay with me that you hate black people. I mean, no, it's not.
Yeah, see,
but it's all
hear you,
it's all stupid, because when you think about it, if you don't like a person because they're gay and they're black, it's usually that goes hand in hand with the religious part of it. Okay, now it's an oxymoron, because now you're saying I'm a Christian and you're not supposed to be judgmental, you're supposed to love your neighbor, all the stuff that they talk about in their churches, and yet they'll come out and say, but we have to change those gay people, I don't like gay people. So again, it's a contradiction of like your belief.
Reparation therapy.
Well, I mean, Jesus said, to love everyone, and everyone was made in God's image and all this. Mm-hmm. But forget that.
Forget it when you come out the doors.
Person's gay,
right?
Or they're
black,
Muslim or black or whatever, and. It's
like,
to me, that's hypocritical. So
right.
I don't have any religious friends either.
Yeah. See, I want you to, I'm not trying to.
I know.
But I want you to say it though, because that's the thing. Like, that's what you'll hear from a conservative, and then my thought inside is, I'm tolerant, but I'm not tolerant of hatred. Right. That's okay.
Yeah,
that part. Yeah, I mean, to be tolerant of a bigot, no, that's going a little far.
Now,
but
yeah.
But
now,
I get that.
If somebody is a Republican and they believe that there should be no taxes, well, I can be tolerant of that. I might not agree with that.
Right, like social conservatives are tough to deal with. Economic conservatives.
But you're on the empathetic side of humanity. That it's going to come down to how we are as a human being. And even this crap with Trump mouthing off about women. I can't tell you how many women over the last couple of weeks, they like him and that's been going on forever, what's the big deal? Or, you've got the ones like myself that I can't even believe that a woman would be okay with any commentary like that. And it doesn't matter whether it happened before or not. It doesn't make it right. And
Well, I mean, it's happened forever. But I've never heard a candidate for president admit that that's what they do.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's going to sue them all now, though. He's going to sue them. That's his latest thing. I'm going to sue them all because they're all liars.
But he, it wasn't just that he said that he thought that was like cool and okay to do. He said that's what he does.
Yes, his definition.
It was still going on because he had to pop a Tic Tac before he met the woman.
Exactly, he was already in line to do it there.
Yeah, and Billy Bush is standing there, thinking, "Oh my God, is he going to do it?" Because she's a beautiful woman, and he said he can't help himself.
That's
Of
right. I
course
mean,
he didn't do. He's
He's
all
just-
tough.
he described sexual assault. Do you mind if we take a little
Yes,
break here?
let's take a break and then we can.
All right, so we have a song lined up, and I'm so glad we're at this station because now we can play music. I want to play this music. It's really special because, well, first of all, it's by Cat Stevens, and just so you know, he did convert, and he is a Muslim. So, oh my God, can we still listen to it? Can we listen to
think
him?
we can.
I mean, he has a heart. He writes beautiful music, but he's a Muslim, so I don't know if it counts. Is it good? We're still good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
I don't
Quick
think
li-
it would do anything bad to it.
Quick little story. My mother took me to a movie when I was like 7 years old, Harold and Maude, and the song was on there. And I just want to say, when you listen to the song, and I hope you do listen to all the words, I think every child needs to have a parent that definitely goes along with the words of this song. In other words, you can be you can be me, you can be anything you want to be. There's so many things in this world to choose from and to be, and not be so hammered down by a parent that's so authoritarian that you have to be only one way or else I won't love you. Right? You've got to be one way. And so this to me is all about unconditional love, and that's the way it really should be. And that's what I had for my mother, and that's kind of what I want you to hear right now.
Well, if you want to sing out, sing out. And if you want to be free, be free. 'Cause there's a million things to be, you know that there are. And if you want to live high, live high. And if you want to live low, live low. 'Cause there's a million ways to go, you know that there are. You can do what you want. The opportunity's on. And if you find a new way, you can do it today. You can make it all true. And you can make it undo. You see, it's easy. You only need to know. Well, if you want to say yes, say yes. And if you want to say no, say no. 'Cause there's a million ways to go, you know that there are. And if you want to be me, be me. And if you want to be you, be you. 'Cause there's a million things to do, you know that there are. You can do what you want. The opportunity's on. And if you find a new way, you can do it today. You can make it all true. And you can make it undo. You see, it's easy. You only need to know. Well, if you want to sing out, sing out. And if you want to be free, be free. 'Cause there's a million things to be. You know that there are, you know that there are, you know that there are, you know that there are. You know that there are.
This is the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Peroni.
You're Jim.
Oh,
And I'm Heidi Mancini. And this is
Vicki Lynch.
Vicki Lynch. And I just want to take a moment to say hi to Jim Lynch. We love you, Jim. Are you playing your saxophone? I just want to say hello. That's Vicky's husband.
That's likely what he's doing.
How long have you
38 years.
38 years. Wow.
That's a long
That's a long
time.
time.
And they have a daughter who's, how old is your daughter now?
31.
31. Yeah. So she's in New York City
Yeah.
doing her jam.
Yeah.
Does she work for publishers? Who does she work
She works for Macmillan Publishing. She used to work for Random House. She has an interview Monday, and she may end up in San Francisco.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
That's a lot closer.
We'll
Liberal.
see.
I'm there. No.
Yeah.
John, can you come over here for a second and tell everybody what you told me before the start of the show? It's only like one sentence.
No.
No? Come on, man.
No.
Because I'm going to do my board thing again, and I need you to say
have
it
to
before
make
we
sure
start.
that I'm not wearing green.
Okay.
Okay, and this goes along with the theme of the show today, and I think, and that is, I fully support freedom of speech, as long as you agree with me.
That's been the story of my life. So with that, I want to do a quick little board thing, and they're factual. So again, if anybody gets offended by it, yeah, I can't help that. Then I want to get into some women's issues.
Don't
with you
confuse
guys.
me with the facts.
Yeah, the facts. Because as we said last week,
Those facts, we don't
those
want those.
pesky facts. You are entitled to all your opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts, right?
That's right.
This is like the shortest list ever, by the way, because this list could be a mile long.
I saw a list today that was 150.
Did you? And that's a short list too. So what we're talking about, part of this is the progressive brain, liberal, compared to a status quo, amygdala-driven, fear-driven, I need to have constancy in my life type of brain, almost regressive, like we're always just trying to stay either where we are or pull backwards. So I want to give you some progressive, here's the scoreboard, all right? Now, I'm an athlete, so I don't really care liberal, conservative either way. I just want to know what's better. Move this over a little? Okay. I just want to know, or in front of your face. So, I just want to know what's better. So give me the scoreboard, like an athlete or a sports team, right? So here we go. This is the progressive contributions to the United States. Now, also think of this in terms of legacy. Like, if you were back during the American Revolution and you were kind of a wuss and you were very conservative, you said, "Wow, don't move." Okay.
Don't move the board. Stay still.
You would say, let's go with what we have.
the line.
We don't want to push the envelope. Let's just stay where we are. So there would have been no American Revolution. So let's continue. Here's some progressive contributions. The American Revolution, the end of slavery. Who would have thought? Civil Rights Act, the women's voting rights, public schools, and minorities' right to use schools and facilities, including water fountains. Who would have thought? Right? Like conservatives actually thought that was okay to separate black from white. We now have gay marriage, child labor laws. Why? Because conservatives thought it was okay to have 10-year-olds working 15 hours a day. Unions, that's not even on my list. We can add unions to progressive.
Yeah.
The Clean Air and Water Act. Why would you not want clean air and water?
They want to dismantle the EPA.
I
That's
know they do.
always one of their top priorities.
Yeah, because corporations can make just a little
And
bit
Richard
more money.
Nixon created that. A conservative.
Look at you. See? Yeah. All right. You knew that.
Yeah.
Vicky's got
That's
her facts.
amazing.
You got the facts.
Do you want to run the rest of this?
No, I'm
You're
sorry.
You're better than me at it.
I'm sorry.
Social Security.
Oh, that's
Liberal.
huge.
That
That's
is huge. Public libraries. Think
Oh, and
about
by
that.
the way, they want to privatize Social Security.
They do. Yeah. And
Because-
what would have happened in 2008 if they privatized Social
Yeah,
Security?
and the stock market crashes, and oh, too bad.
Yeah, it would have been over, right?
But somebody would have made some money.
The people at the fat cats at the top,
Yeah,
and that's
so
all they
that's
care
like,
about.
So what? Yeah.
Medicare. How about fire departments? What do you think about that? Roe v. Wade, woman's right to choose. Then we have public transportation. Think about that. Another liberal idea. More. Now, here's the thing with conservatives always say, yeah, but we're into the military. Yeah, no. Because without John Kennedy, right, he wanted a counterinsurgents thing. We have Navy SEALs, Green Beret, directly related to liberal ideas. How about the police department that you guys are so fond of? You know, it's like, it's really odd. Conservatives, they have this anti-gay mentality, but man, do they love a good-looking guy in a uniform, don't they? Like, they just love policemen. They love firemen. They love the military, right? Like, it's kind of like the village people. I mean, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, God.
you and I are into psychology. We both understand when you have a hatred for people that are there,
Yeah.
there's something in
Oh,
here that
yeah.
you hate about yourself,
Well,
and you're
look how many
projecting.
conservatives have been found to be having illicit affairs, even though they're married and then they're all
Newt
voting.
Gingrich last
Yes.
night.
Yeah.
I mean, he cheats on every one of his wives, and he's out. Oh God. Anyway,
Yeah.
check this out: the GI Bill, NASA, the space program. Again, liberal. How about this? Bank deposit insurance. That make you feel good? It should. Because if it was up to the fat cats, it'd be like, sorry, not your week. Thanks for depositing the money.
Right.
And how about freedom of speech? Just like John said, but not so much.
And a big one, voting rights.
Voting rights, yes.
The Civil Rights
And
Act.
there's so many. And here's the interesting thing too. Black people are allowed to marry white people. Now, do you know why they weren't allowed a long time ago? Because the conservatives? Because they were thought to be of a different species. Let that sink in. Let that sink in.
They were 3/5 of a human.
There you go. We'll talk about that
3/5.
too. 3/5 of a human. That's
During
disgusting.
slavery,
That was
yeah.
they determined 3/5 of a
Yeah,
person.
because they would have, the census has been going on since the late 1700s, every 10 years. And when the census would come around to count how many people lived there, they would only count the slaves as 3/5 of a person.
It's so sick to hear, So-
I mean, imagine just, that was just how it was.
So when you have all that plus all the others, where would our country be without a liberal mind trying to make things better? I mean, where would we be?
Right. But now, the list you showed, and there's so many more things you
Oh,
could have
there's a
listed.
ton more. I couldn't fit it on the thing.
Absolutely. When you see all of that, you just can't believe that there would be anybody who would not agree with those things. And I imagine that there's a lot of conservatives that look at a lot of that and say, yeah, hey, that's great, But now they're trying to dismantle so much of that.
Right, regressive. That's why I call it regressive.
And it is regressive. I mean, it's a constant battle. Are you going to move forward or are you going to move back?
But who
That's
wants
the
to go
big
back?
fight.
We want to go back because we want to make America great again.
To
When?
To
minus
win.
all of that.
When?
To win. And great for who?
For who? When women couldn't vote?
That's right. I would
women
just
were-
like to point out here,
Slave
yeah.
days. Let's go back to the slave days. Those
Right.
were awesome years.
when my mother was born, women did not have the right to vote.
Wow,
My
That's-
own mother.
that's crazy.
Oh yeah, and then what hurts me a lot too is now the younger women, they don't seem to care anything about that. If you talk to a millennial about Hillary Clinton, well, why should I vote for her just because she's a woman? I'm not going to vote for her just because she's a woman. I want somebody who does. Well, do you realize, how important it is to have the first woman president? Yeah, well, that's not really so important to me.
In a way, that might be good.
That they
Just
take it
because
for
it's
granted.
yeah. Before I want you guys to get into the woman issues, but I want to say one thing. Can I do that? Because I know somebody's going to say you're not being fair. What about conservative? What have they contributed to society? So I compiled the list.
Oh, Joe.
A piece of paper.
No, I'm being honest. Like this is their one, and it's a big contribution. Don't get me wrong. Ending the Cold War with Russia by bankrupting the U.S. and Russia. That counts.
Most everything
that's
comes
it.
back to money.
Yeah, but
It's
that was
all
it.
about money. It's not about people, what they need. You're making their lives better, feeding hungry people.
Right.
It's about money.
So tell me more about some women's issues real quick, about this somehow justifying sexual assault. It's like how, what do you guys think?
You can't justify it. When he said that, it made me think of that show, Mad Men. I never watched Mad Men, but it was set in the 60s. And the attitudes of businessmen, like Wall Street type guys, toward their wives and other women, Trump is stuck in that type of atmosphere.
And I think too, it made a lot of women, at least for me, when he started talking like that, it flashes you back, because every single one of us has had something happen that's been in that situation.
Right.
And because the guy was older, or he had money, or you felt like you could be in trouble with your job, you kind of went along with it. And the whole statement that he said about, well, just because we go along with it, it doesn't make it okay. Sometimes you go along with it because you're fearful for your job, or you're afraid. You're like, here's this guy, he's older than me, he's powerful, I'm in my 20s, and what am I going to do, you know? So you kind of foof it off, and you never tell anybody.
That's why a lot of
why
these women have come forward now, because, and Trump will say, well, that happened 20 years ago, you know, why are they coming now? For that very reason you said. They didn't feel that they would be believed. They thought it would just be too hard on them to have to deal with that. And when he said what he said and women started coming forward, that gave them the courage to come forward and tell their story. And the only person I think that doesn't believe it is Trump. Because you're going to tell me because Trump believes all the women and what they said about Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Because there were so many. Well, to me, 10 or 11 or 12 is so many.
There's so many too. Yeah.
But that's not the same thing. I kind of think
It is the same thing.
Yeah.
So this conservative thought I've heard, and they actually kind of justify it numerous times. They'll say, Donald Trump said, "Did you take a look at her? She's not pretty. I would never sexually assault her."
Yeah.
Tell
I don't
me,
think so.
Tell me
folks.
what that means to you as a woman, and how that is.
Well, he makes it sound like if she had really been good looking, yeah, maybe I would have done that.
And it
But
would've
come
been
on.
okay.
Yeah,
And it would have
but
been
come
okay.
on,
Better
but-
looking, it would have been
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, but come on, folks, look at her. I don't think so. Otherwise, what?
Otherwise what?
Yeah.
What would you do
And
otherwise?
I don't know if you noticed, but all the women that, except that one woman that he said that about, who is now older, because it's happened so long ago, the other women that came out were all gorgeous blondes. I mean, there might have been a brunette in there somewhere,
But they're all blondes.
but
yeah.
that, and that even made it more likely to be true, because that's his thing. That's his thing. So,
So again, it's regressive. Like, I want to see, did you start working in the 70s? Is that
yeah, early 70s.
What was it like as a woman trying to make it in the 70s as work? Was
I
it
had
difficult?
no problem whatsoever because it was civil service. In
Right,
civil
right.
service, if you were also an RT like I was, we would make the same amount of money.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? So the problems that a lot of women have in business, I didn't personally experience because I've always been civil service. Same thing here in Nevada. So, and to be honest, most of the people that are in that line of work are Democrats.
Right, because they're caring people.
Because otherwise, why be in that field? And once in a while, I mean, there are some Republicans. They're not all.
Right.
You could never say that, but
Right.
it didn't seem to be so much of a problem.
We only have probably about 30 seconds left. Let me ask this real quick. So is it fair to say that there was equal pay because the state was paying you?
Yeah, because
Okay, so that's another reason why.
there are pay levels,
government-
and that
yeah.
was on paper, and that
So the
was,
inequity is
yeah.
by individuals who
Right.
have it against women or minorities, and that's why sometimes government steps in.
Yeah,
It's the corporate business owners that decide who's worth what.
Right.
Because you can walk into a corporation and ask three people, what do you make? And that neither one of them know what the other ones make. But there is always a discrepancy in starting wages, pay raises,
Right,
and all that.
right.
And that's what causes a lot of dissension, you know.
that's
so.
true.
And that's corporate doing.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Vicki, thanks for being here. It was great.
Thank you.
I had a good
enjoyed
time.
it. I enjoyed it.
So this is the Rise Above show. I am Joe Peroni,
I'm Heidi Mancini.
and our special guest.
Vicki Lynch.
Wow.